Hey guys, Mr. Grippa coming at you here from room 227 West Claremont High School. We're getting ready to start our first unit here in anatomy, the introductory unit, where we're going to kind of dip our toe in and start this new course. So today we're going to start with the introductory terms. We're going to talk a little bit about some directional terms, subdivisions of anatomy, and a few things along those lines just to get us started. So let's go ahead and begin.
All right, everybody, let's go ahead and get started with our first unit and introduction to the human body. All right. So first of all, the name of this class is Anatomy and Physiology. So I always ask right off the bat, why the two words? Why is the class referred to as Anatomy and Physiology? Clearly, the two words mean something different from each other. That's why they are there. So the difference is anatomy is the study of the structure of the body, which is basically what is it? Where is it? What is it attached to? Where do you find it in the body? What is it called? That kind of stuff. The word anatomy is derived from the Greek, which means to cut or cutting backwards, putting things together from slices, kind of like a puzzle. The word physiology refers to the function of the body. How does the body work? So when we're talking about anatomy and physiology, it is in a shortened way is it's simply structure versus function. What is it? Where is it? And how does it work? Okay. So let's give an example. So structure versus function, how the body are closely related. Many times the structure will mirror the function. Okay. Names, location, origin, and insertion of the muscles of the body. Okay. That is anatomy. So biceps brachii refers to the muscles in the upper arm versus biceps femoris, which are the muscles that are in your hamstrings. Okay. Both called biceps, but the term brachii tells us it's in the upper arm, and the term femoris tells us that it is in the thigh region. So that is just anatomy. But how do those muscles work? So when the nervous system sends an electrical signal down the pipeline, and at the junction where called the motor neuron, or where the motor implate, where the nervous system joins the muscular system, that signal is converted into a chemical signal, and that signal causes the muscle to contract. And when we get into the muscular system, we'll go into more detail about how that happens. But the long and short of it is that electrical signal causes the release of a substance called acetylcholine. Acetylcholine travels across the synaptic gap, and this changes the polarity of the muscle cell and causes sodium to be released, which frees up binding sites on these tiny, tiny, tiny super microscopic structures called actin and myosin, also known as myofilaments. They reach over and grab a hold of each other, and they go through a power stroke, and these filaments slide across one another and causes the muscle to get shorter or contract. And that's how a muscle contracts. And it doesn't matter if it is the biceps brachii, and it doesn't matter if it is the biceps femoris muscle. All you have to know is it doesn't even matter if it's the tongue muscle. That is how all muscle contracts. And that's the difference between anatomy and physiology. So there are some subdivisions of anatomy. We'll talk about the subcategories. Anatomy is a very general term. There are some areas of specialization within that term. So surface anatomy is, as its name would suggest, it is the study of the surface of the body. So an acupuncturist or a massage therapist and even a surgeon would have to know a little bit about surface anatomy so that they would know where to begin making the incision to begin their surgery, for example. So anything that has to do with the surface of the body would fall under the umbrella of surface anatomy. Gross anatomy is, you may be thinking to yourself, this may be things that are disgusting, but that's not how the word is used. You think of gross, if you buy something in gross, you buy it in bulk, large quantities. So gross anatomy is the study of anything that does not require the use of a microscope. So you're looking at large things that you can see with the unaided eye. Gross anatomy can be subdivided into two general approaches: systemic and regional. This class will talk about the human body from more of a systemic approach, meaning once we get through these first two units, the intro and then the tissues unit, we will then start looking at the body by each system. So it will be a systemic approach. The regional deals with an area, and depending on the area or region of the body, that can encompass multiple systems. Okay. For example, you look in the abdominal region, you're going to have digestive organs, you'll have cardiovascular tissue in there, you'll have some part of the cardiovascular system, part of the endocrine system will be in there. There are lots of other systems that you can find representatives of different systems in, say, a section of the abdominal cavity. So we're not going to do a regional approach. We will do a systemic approach. Another example of a subdivision of anatomy would be development anatomy. This is going from a fertilized egg into the adult form and all of the changes that occur in the body from the day of conception until the body is an adult. And then an even narrower form of anatomy is called embryology, and that is the study of the embryo. And of course, that would be from conception, one egg, to about the 8th week of gestation or pregnancy. After that point, the embryo is now considered a fetus, and a fetus is basically a very tiny human being. It looks just like a human. You get out of that embryonic stage where you're not really sure, am I looking at a human or a pig embryo? At that point, once it becomes a fetus, you know you're looking at a human baby. Histology is the study of tissues, and cytology is the study of cells. Here shortly, we'll talk about the structural levels of organization, in which these two are definitely in those categories. So cytology is the study of cells, and as we know from the structural level of organization, cells make up tissues, and the studies of tissues is histology. Now, the study of tissue that has been damaged by disease is called pathology. And any of you who have ever are familiar with a coroner or someone that does an autopsy, they usually are going to have some training in pathology. Most of what they do would be definitely, let me hide that. A lot of what they do will be looking at tissue that have been changed by disease so that they can use that in determining cause of death. And here we see a section of human colon with some polyps. And as we know, polyps in the colon can be precancerous growths. An autopsy, we were just talking about, is a postmortem, or what occurs after death, examination of the body and the internal organs performed by a pathologist. Again, a lot of your pathologists will go into the coroner field. An autopsy is used to determine cause of death, identify diseases not detected during life, which means they probably caused the death, determine the extent of injuries that contribute to death, and identify any hereditary conditions. So speaking of the levels of organization, here we go. And hopefully this will be a review from your biology course, but we're going to cover it just real quick anyway. So if we go from the smallest or the least complex to the largest or most complex, you start up here in the chemical, which are either considered the atomic or the molecular state. So chemicals, atoms, molecules all work together to form the cell. Cells work together to form tissues. tissues work together to form organs, organs work together to form organ systems, and all of the organ systems work together to form the organism. So before we go any further, this is typically where I will ask how many systems make up the human body. And I'll pause while you contemplate that. And then if I have someone that knows the answer, then I will say, how many of those can you list? And that's when we will have a little mental exercise of trying to list the 11 systems. So there I kind of gave it away of how many systems there are, but I will save the answer as to what those 11 are until later. So let's talk about, again, continuing with the levels of organization. The cell is next in complexity over the molecular stage. In fact, billions of times more complex than molecules. There is a lot going on inside all cells. And if you remember anything from your biology class, you know that the cell is the basic form of life, that if anything that is considered to be alive has to have at least one cell, has to be made up of a or multiple cells. And here we see a generalized animal cell with a complete representation of all the organelles. And I don't know how well you know your organelles from your biology class, but you have the nucleus with the nucleolus. You have your endoplasmic reticulum covered with ribosomes, which would make it rough ER. You have your Golgi apparatus. You have your mitochondria, which I'm sure everyone knows, the powerhouse of the cell. Okay, and you got some lysosomes there and a few other things. Hopefully we know all about that. We don't need to spend a whole lot of time talking about them. So I'm sure we all remember the jobs of those organelles from our biology class. All right, there are many different kinds of very specialized cells within the human body. A trained cytologist can recognize under a light microscope, which are these scopes that we have here, about 210 different kinds of cells. Okay, we'll find out that not only, everybody talks about blood and red blood cells. Well, there are white blood cells as well, and there are a number of different kinds of white blood cells. So just to give you an idea of how many different kinds of cells there are out there in your body. Cells work together to form tissues. Tissues are groups of cells that work together to perform a similar function. There are 4 main kinds of tissues we will learn in our next unit. So for right now, before we get into the different kinds of tissues in each of those 4 main groups, for right now, we just need to know the 4 basic types, which are epithelium, your covering and lining tissue, muscle. These are your cells that move or move things through organs. Nerves, this makes up your central and periphery nervous system. And of course, the connective tissue, it holds it all together. Tissues make up organs. Organs are the structures composed of 2 or more different types of tissue. All but the simplest of organs have all 4 basic tissues represented. So in this corner, we have a section of skin. This is I usually refer to it as the skin cube or the cube o skin. And in this cube of skin, we'll see connective tissue. Down here, we have some fat. There are also elastic fibers here within your skin. Here we see blood vessels. That's going to be cardiovascular tissue. This is glandular in nature. This is a sweat gland here and here. So you have a muscle right here. That's the muscle in the skin that causes your hair to stand up. You have epithelial tissue, of course, that protects and lines your body. So there's lots of stuff. And then there's nerves. So these little yellow guys here, those are your nerve endings. All of those are all 4 represented in the largest organ in your body, your skin. An organ system consists of related organs with a common function. For example, the digestive system handles all aspects of taking in and breaking down food, absorbing nutrients, and eliminating waste. And then, of course, that food will be used by your body. It includes all the organs that are found, which would be the mouth, esophagus, stomach, intestines, liver, gallbladder, and pancreas. So your mouth, esophagus, stomach, and both large and small intestines make up what we call the GI or gastrointestinal tract, sometimes referred to as the alimentary canal. And that means food passes through those organs. The liver, the gallbladder, and the pancreas help secrete substances into the GI tract to aid in digestion, but never have food go through them. So they're referred to as accessory structures. And as I alluded to earlier, there are 11 organ systems in the body. The organism consists of a collection of all of the organ systems. And here we have a pretty good representation of the organism of the human animal. 6 important life processes we have. All of us will possess metabolism. Metabolism is how efficiently our bodies use the energy we put in our bodies. Responsiveness is how you respond to stimuli. Movement, our ability to move around. Growth, how we not only grow upwards and outwards with age, but also how we heal. That can be considered a type of growth. How the tissues differentiate, how we have muscle tissue and bone tissue and all nervous tissue and all the other kinds of tissues in the body. And then, of course, if we're going to keep ourselves as living, breathing species on this planet, we have to make more, and we are definitely good at that. That is the system of reproduction. Hey, there's my bird clock. And in all parts of the body, there must be functioning together called homeostasis. And this is everything working together, keeping our bodies nice and warm and happy and healthy. So anytime your body is constantly trying to keep things within acceptable ranges. So classic example would be your body temperature, right? If your body temperature goes up, your body does things to bring that temperature back down. You sweat, your blood vessels dilate and let blood get close to the surface of your skin to help radiate heat. Evaporation is a cooling process. So when the sweat evaporates, it cools the skin. And if the skin is full of blood due to the dilation of blood vessels, that blood cools. And as we pump that cooler blood through the body, we cool our bodies down. The exact opposite happens when we get cold. The blood vessels will dilate, keeping blood away from the extremities. This is why your fingers, ears, nose, and toes are always the first to get cold. And then that keeps the warm blood around the core of your body, help keeping your body, the important parts of your body, the most important parts warm. And then you will also begin to shiver. And as we know, muscle contraction generates heat. So your body is shivering to try to generate heat to bring your body temperature back up. And that's one example of how your body will want to maintain a good, healthy level of homeostasis. That is going to bring us to where we're going to stop for lesson 1. So head on over to wherever it is you need to go in Schoology and go take that exit slip, and we will talk to you later.
All right, so that should wrap up everything we need to discuss on the first lecture video in the series. Should be about 3 more, and we should be able to get through them. So either head over to Edpuzzle and take the questions, answer the questions, or depending on how we've set it up, you can go over to Schoology and take your exit slip. Have a good one.